people always ask me, we did not have people beating down our doors. Like I always, one of the things I've heard throughout the course of Barstool is you should be making so much money here and doing this there and deals there. It's like, I'm looking, I don't see these mythical deals everyone's talking about. And there was no bidding war when Chernin came around. I'm going all in.
All right, besties. I think that was another epic discussion. People love the interviews. I could hear him talk for hours. Absolutely.
We crushed your questions, admit it.
We are giving people ground truth data to underwrite your own opinion. What do you guys think? That was fun. That was great.
I'm going all in.
Dave Portnoy, thanks for joining us.
Yep.
Barstool. Dave, you obviously own and run a media business, I guess, best way to describe it. Barstool's got media franchises spanning sports, gambling, pizza reviews, and you've got a huge audience. You've been through an incredible corporate history, which I think one of the things we wanted to talk about today was talking about the business, if you're up for it.
Yep.
And talk a little bit about the history of the business. Super interesting to us when the acquisition happened with Penn and the subsequent buyback. We thought it was a super interesting story. We actually reached out and tried to have a conversation with you at that time about it, but unfortunately missed you. So we're really glad to have you here today. We hope to talk about that, hope to talk about media, free speech, politics. I think there's a lot of stuff you've talked about that we often talk about that I think we'd love to just have a dialogue, and we'll see where this goes.
Sounds good.
Yeah, welcome to the All In interview, and thanks for being with us. And Chamath, anything you want to start with?
Tell us about just getting out of New York.
Yeah, so we were saying before, we relocated to New York in 2016 when Chernin bought half the company. And it was basically the concept was create a reality blog media type company, turn the lights on, see what happened, let everyone see it into the company. And it was easier to get talent, we thought, in New York, attract people to work. And when athletes or entertainers come through, they usually stop in New York and we can grab them into the office. So that's why we moved there. I don't think anybody in our company loved New York. It was not, I mean, I personally think it's a dirty city. I don't like it. I think just not my favorite cup of tea. And then I also got a lot of money. So once we were starting to get more money with, and I guess fast forwarding because when we did the Penn deal, I was like, the taxes are so crazy there. Florida, I went during COVID because it was an open state. That's really what initiated this whole thing is when COVID happened, New York locked down, Florida was pretty much open. So I went there, visited, and then kind of stayed there longer term during COVID. Black Lives Matter happened. A lot of things were happening in New York City. And I'm like, I may stay in Miami.
Were you the only shareholder when Peter bought 35 or whatever, 40% of the business?
Peter bought 51, right? At that time?
51%. So 4 employees of mine, I had given equity, like, hey, if something happens, you have small. It wasn't, I don't even know if it's on paper. But for the most part, yes, I had given away 10 to 12% of the company to my long-term employees.
That was 2016. And when Chernin bought 51%, was that a buyout or was that money going into the company?
So they valued the company at, I think, $12.5 million. Wildly, I didn't know what I was doing. They really, that was too low, but whatever. That's what they valued it for. I think I got about, if I recall, $3.5 million went to me personally, and then the rest went into the business account.
Right. And then you moved it to New York and you ran the business for a couple of years, and obviously things took off. The business grew. Was Chernin Group like active at this time? Like, were they helpful, or was it you building the business and they were just kind of quiet financial sponsors? How did that phase go?
So when they purchased us, they basically gave the money. We weren't great at business. The first thing we did, we went out and hired Erica Nardini as CEO. So she really helped expand the business side of what we were doing, and we exploded. But Chernin, to answer your question, they weren't involved at all. I think they really, slightly here or there if we had a question. I think the biggest thing they did is probably credibility. Like I was probably seen as, and still am at times, like a wild card. Like you don't know what you're dealing with, and you put the Chernin name on it. It's like, oh, these guys are legit. They're real. It maybe helped us get into meetings and doors, but they weren't in the day-to-day operations at all. Probably, I would say, the best thing they did is they stayed out of our way.
Well, that's crazy because in like 3.5 years, almost, or maybe 4 years, you took the business from like 12.5 million valuation to like
Oh, wait,
half
hold
a
on,
billion.
hold on. This is the question I had.
Yeah.
The question is, Dave, when that business explodes, are you spending like a few minutes every day saying, God damn, why did I do this deal? Like, or did you think it was really still worth it, when the company goes
I
from...
never question it because, again, people always ask me, we did not have people beating down our doors. Like, I always, one of the things I've heard throughout the course of Barstool is you should be making so much money here and doing this there and deals there. It's like, I'm looking, I don't see these mythical deals everyone's talking about. And there was no bidding war when Chernin came around. So while understanding it, my biggest thing, I've never sold a company. I wasn't looking to sell a company. When they approached us, they really were looking at like our gross revenue. And I didn't care about gross revenue at all. I care about making a profit and putting money in my pocket. And that's how we earned our living. They were basing our net worth. They give me like comps of other companies. I'm like, we are way bigger than they are. But they're like, well, they have gross sales and all this. It's like, well, they're losing money. Like if I had a year to build up for that sale and I just wanted to inflate our gross revenue, I could have done that easily. I didn't. So we definitely sold it for far less. But at the same time, they were one of the only serious offers we had. And they stayed out of our way. They were kind of, in a way, the perfect partner outside the price because they let us do our thing. So I didn't regret it.
And so when the Penn deal came around, was that you saying, guys, we have to really think about this? Or was that Chernin saying we need to think about this?
Before you get to the Penn deal, how did the business go crazy over that 3.5 years? Did you invest a lot of capital at that time? I mean, how did the business go from 12.5 to $500 million? Is it that you shifted the strategy and said, hey, let's go after revenue now? Or did you expand?
I think it was probably two major things. Erica was a perfect hire and built out the business side, and people just totally underestimated us. Like, I knew how big we were. And in a weird way, I think a lot of times, even though people know us now, they still are kind of flabbergasted when you go under the hood and see our influence. Like, Barstool's around 20 years. So during the time that we sold, I always gave the analogy, and this is old internet, but people throw numbers out and how big their audience was. And it's like if you're watching TV and someone has a remote control and they're just clicking every second, it's like everybody got one view. Like my network has a view, my network has a view. And I'd be telling people, yeah, but ours aren't changing the channel. Like our viewer is one. They're on the channel for 30 minutes listening. So our influence was just underestimated. So and we did nothing on the business side. Like, we really were so busy on creating content, and you had to knock down our door to advertise with us. So when we changed that philosophy and like, let's build out the business side, our tech, all of it with our existing audience, it was just kind of like a powder keg that exploded. It didn't shock me, to be honest. Granted, the original business plan said in 5 years they wanted to sell it for like $50 million. That was the original business plan, and we got past that in like 6 months.
But you guys decided to build, quote unquote, in the wild. Like, you had cameras inside, you made stars of some of the people in there. Was that organic, or was that was like an explicit decision? You're like, this could be really interesting because these people are really odd characters. They'll great for television.
So it was organic in the sense I started Barstool and I didn't want anyone to know who I was. It was strictly business. It was supposed to be like a gambling rag, and I had fake names and all this. But in the early days of the newspaper, it slowly shifted that people were much more interested in the personalities behind everything. So by the time we went to New York, we knew the focus should be on the personalities and the people we had working here. And we have this wild cast of characters. And we were hiring people that no one else would ever hire or give a chance. I often say we're one of the first like true digital media companies. Like, the people we found, all the way from Jenna Marbles to Pat McAfee to Alex Cooper. McAfee couldn't get a job when he was done punting. Like,
how did you hire McAfee? How did you hire Alex?
He was a fan. McAfee was a fan. And we met him during a Super Bowl. Like, we were at the Super Bowl and we couldn't get credentialed. We had an RV that we parked outside and had guests come on. McAfee came on and he knew he wanted to get into media. I think he wanted to work at ESPN. They wouldn't hire him. We did. And obviously the rest of the history with him. Alex Cooper had a podcast that she just started. We saw a sizzle reel for it. It was something we'd never seen before. So we called her into the office And when I met her, she basically was like, well, I edited and made this entire sizzle reel myself. I'm like, how'd you do that? She's like, I self-taught myself. So we hired her. No idea what would become with her podcast, but we were willing to take chances, almost like a band label type model. It's like you hire this talent and you hope they hit. There's a lot of misses we have.
How do you look at that? Like, is it just instinct, intuition? You see someone, you're like, they got it, they don't have it. I mean, you kind of...
Yeah, it is instinct, but it's wrong a lot of times. That's why I go with the band label. Like, you hear something, this is unique, this is interesting. It may not always work for me, like in my own personality. A lot of the people who come from networks, they're so used to being told what to do. It's like all the way up. This is how you produce it. This is the hits. This is what you have to do. We didn't do any of that. It's Alex. Go do your thing. Sink or swim on the internet. The beauty of the internet, it will tell
it's
you
it's
whether
a voting machine. It votes.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's not true on ESPN. Maybe more so now. But if you have Sports Center back in the day, or you have the NFL show, or your CBS, you almost have to watch it. Old terrestrial radio, there aren't options. The internet, like you said, a voting machine. So we'd hire people and let the internet decide what became of them.
The old studio model, Dave, they would have talent development. And so there would be these producers that would come in and help the talent get better, train them, teach them the art, et cetera. But it sounds like, do you guys do that? I mean, do you kind of stay out of their way? You kind of let them run, let them figure it out themselves. And there's no training, there's no tools, there's no toolkit that says, here's how you become successful, here's what you got to hit on, here's what you got to do well, here's what you got to learn not to do, et cetera.
Yeah, we don't do any of that. I would say all those people, anybody who tried to do what you just described would not fit with us, and I'd say is a dinosaur. Like, again, the people we've hired from networks, the talent, it's like they need their hand held for the most part. They're so waiting, this is what you do, this is what you say, and we don't do any of that.
Yeah. So the raw independent talent, you just let them run, they take off. So then the business blows up. Yeah. And then, tell us about the Penn deal. Like, how did that conversation start? When it happened, we talked about it on our show because Chamath and I have talked a lot about this idea of the individual influencer media brands need to monetize in non-traditional ways. It's not just about selling ads, but there's kind of, CPG businesses that are being launched by Kim Kardashian and Kylie Jenner, and there's an entirely new business model that's emerged with the independent media businesses that have been created over the last decade. And this seemed like a very good example of that. I guess, how did the conversation with Penn start, and how did that deal kind of come about?
Yeah, so they changed the laws in the United States. That's what sparked it when they said sports gambling was going to become legal and a state issue. When I started the thing, we were a gambling newspaper. Like, that's what we were. So when that happened, I instantly was like, this is our chance. So we proactively went out and tried to solicit deals. Like, I had worked with DraftKings. I'd worked with FanDuel back in the day. DraftKings, when there were 4 people, they offered me stock in the company. They're Boston guys. I remember we sat down and we were kind of building our thing. They were building theirs. So I knew this space inside and out. We really didn't get any offers. We hired Moelis, which is like a banking. Sucked.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, they sucked. They absolutely sucked. Behind the doors, one of the guys trashed me. So the reason they weren't getting any offers was because I was like an asshole or something to that effect. I caught wind of that. Still irks me. They got 1 penny of commission on that sale, but they did. The Penn came through. We had a guy, David, who's in the gambling space, who introduced us to Penn. I had never heard of them. And Erica and I hit it off with Jay Snowden, the CEO. And that deal basically was exclusively negotiated between Jay and I. Erica involved too. Chernin wasn't involved. They didn't really want to talk to Chernin. They want to talk to Erica and I because that's who they would be dealing with. So it's like, what's Dave about? Does Dave and Erica get along? What's the company about? And we negotiated that deal pretty much exclusively.
And then the deal was set up as a 2-stage, right? Like, they bought a piece and then they bought the rest later.
Correct. Which, my understanding of it, it was always going to happen that way. Like, and there were conversations that maybe would have changed our fortunes. Who knows? Like, in the beginning, do we call it Barstool Sportsbook or not? Because some people may not have a taste for Barstool. I argued we should. We'd lose what is one of the great things. I could have been wrong because dealing with state legislatures and government is a bear. But it was always let's not go all in right away because we don't want to shock gambling like legislatures. Let's start it slower and say we don't own them, and then eventually we'll acquire the whole thing. So that was always the plan, and the price points were kind of mapped out.
And the thought from Penn is, if Dave and Eric are creating all this great content, we can integrate our sports book in there. And now we just have a much cheaper way to get a lot more customers as gambling becomes legal all throughout America.
Correct.
That's their basic bet.
And they had no national brand. So in that sense, they're the perfect fit. Like, they owned all these scattered casinos throughout the country. Most of them people probably haven't heard of unless you live in that area. But what that did do is it gave them licenses for the sports gambling. So it's like, what brand are they going to launch with? They didn't have one. So in that, we were the perfect fit. And the launch was actually very successful in terms of, we were up 15% or so in Pennsylvania. Other states, pretty good launches, but super competitive. But yeah, that was the theory behind it.
So what happened? Then the deal kind of turned upside down pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say quickly because I thought we were kind of moving and grooving for a while. Our model was essentially, we're not going to pay for advertising. Like, we're the advertising vehicle. So the people in that space are spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars. And the market shares, it's...
You mean the gambling companies?
Correct. DraftKings, FanDuel, MGM, Caesars, hundreds of millions. We're spending none. They bought us. So we're getting smashed in that regard, but we're still kind of holding our market share, which I thought was pretty strong. Our tech wasn't great, and I think we knew that. They bought a company, The Score, for $2 billion. I think they spent a lot of money on The Score for the tech, and it took a while for that to come out. We didn't control it. I was under the impression for the past football season, we didn't promote that hard. Like, we kind of waited because we were waiting for the new tech. And then by the time the new tech came out, they formed the deal with ESPN, and we were done. So,
did they step in and tell you how to run the company during that time? Were they kind of active and changing stuff, or did they kind of leave you alone as well?
I think they were a headache for Erica in the sense of, like, we had to report now to a public company, and there was maybe more emphasis on the bottom line. I didn't get affected by it outside of a scandal hit in their public company, but they were pretty lenient. Again, there were things that came up in that relationship like that I don't think anybody could predict. I still think we could do a very good job. We're very good at promoting gambling, and for pennies on the dollar compared to what other companies do.
So they did an ESPN deal without your knowledge, or did they tell you, hey, we got this inbound from ESPN and we're trying to figure out what to do with it?
They did the ESPN deal without me being involved.
So you find out on the back end of that.
Correct.
And so how did you structure this deal to then get it out? Because it seems, that press was even more incredible than the press on the way in, because it's like Portnoy just executed a really sick deal, it looked like.
Yeah, I think was just a basic feeling from Penn and us that the Barstool ESPN worlds are different. They were going to partner with ESPN. They tried with us, and I think the hiccup with me and my persona and what people feel about me, it's one thing.
What is your persona and what do people feel about you?
It depends who you ask. Some people love me and they'll be like, this guy should run for president. And some people think I'm the devil. So depends what article you read. But, all the things that, he's sexist.
Who loves you? What do they look like, that person? And who hates you? What do they look like?
I'd say a rational person likes me and a crazy person doesn't like me, but that's my own.
I feel the same way. It's so crazy.
I think if you're going stereotypical, you're going to say the right generally likes me and the extreme left generally doesn't. I think the moderates on both sides generally like me, but, my core beliefs generally tend, and people who follow me for a long time know this, tend to line up with the left more than it does with the right. But the hate I get comes from the left, not the right.
You're a man without a home.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of philosophy they have there. But I will say, if you say something that goes contrary to either side, they'll equally jump down your throat and be like, oh, forget everything we've said about him. Like, I remember I said it's pro-choice once, and I mean, the right wanted to cut my tongue out of my mouth. I mean, they were coming from people who had, for 10 years, been like, we love this guy, we love this guy, we love this guy, disagreed on one point, and they're like, we hate this guy, we hate this guy, we hate this guy. So, both, I guess I'm a man without a home is a fair way to put it.
But Dave, at the end of the day, it's like you speak your mind and people appreciate someone who speaks their mind and speaks their truth.
Yeah.
Or you speak the agenda. And if you speak the agenda, they say, we like you. And if you don't speak the agenda, we don't like you.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it varies from if you can not speak the agenda and they don't like you, but if you get back on agenda on the next thing, they like you again. They don't stay too firm on it's just what you said last is basically what it is. And I've always said, the biggest issue I have with a lot of things, I don't want to know what somebody thinks on an issue by their political affiliation. Like, and I think 95% of the time you hear political people speak, you already know what they're going to say based on their affiliation, which is sad and stinks.
100%.
The flip side 100%. Of that, there's more people, I know that. There's far more people who think like I do, and I feel like that's the norm. But a normal person also doesn't want to get in screaming matches about politics and the craziness.
Totally.
Yeah.
And on any given topic or policy, you got a point of view. But if you don't conform to all the topics and policies that the agenda is defined to be by that party, then you don't fit and you're ousted anyway. You can't be an independent thinker today.
Yeah,
do you think,
wild.
And we talk about this a lot because we just did our All In Summit this week, and this was a repeated theme with all the people we had. We had Kirsten Sinema. She was a senator from Arizona. You know, she got kind of ousted from the Democratic Party for speaking her mind and not kind of conforming to what the Democrats were telling her to do. We have Barry Weiss, who left the New York Times. She was an editor at the New York Times, and she didn't want to conform to their agenda, and she started her own publication called the Free Press. So we had, this was repeated a lot. Some of the academics we had were similarly ousted from their communities. Anytime you don't speak the agenda and you speak your mind, you kind of get ousted, and then you're on the outskirts and you kind of have to start afresh. Do you think that this is a new phenomenon in America, or do you think this has always been the case and we're just all kind of waking up to it because we're, in your case, you're more kind of celebrity now, you're more well known, and so this is becoming more of an issue for you? Has this always been how things have been?
I would guess it has been this way far more than I realized. I think the internet certainly changes a lot of things because people have more voice and more access to information. But I bet it's been like this a lot. I mean, I grew up in a house where like the New York Times is gospel, and my dad hates Trump. Like my dad hates him. My mom hates him. And then I came under attacks from like the New York Times. And that was confusing for like my dad. It's like he's seeing things that he's like, I don't understand how this is happening. And I'm showing him documented stuff. But yeah, I probably think it has been this way because it's about power, really. And power is always something throughout history that people go pretty far to control, maintain. So I would guess this has been going on for a long time.
We interviewed Trump. You did as well. What was that experience like? What did you think about him before going into it? What did you think after? And then when you shared it with your parents, what did that do to your relationship with your parents or their thoughts about him?
Yeah, so when Trump ran the first time, I was like, I'm Trump because I think politics are so broken, and I think he's somebody who can just kind of like make a mockery of it and break politics. I said
you needed a torpedo.
Yes. No, I didn't think he was going to win the presidency. I was stunned. I was nervous when I went to interview him, to be honest, because he asked me. I had like 24 hours notice. He was still sitting president. I don't do interviews. So I was nervous. When I went in, my thought on him was, well, I thought it was funny and interesting. But he gets... If someone is interviewing me and I think they hate my guts, and I think no matter what this interview comes out, I could say I have the cure for cancer, and they'd be like, no, you don't. Or I give you $1 and they want 100. If I just think it's no matter what happens, they are going to try to crucify me, I would probably be like an arrogant dickhead in that interview. When he realized that I was not trying to like gut you or anything, he was affable, open, and normal. I think that's what happens with him quite a bit. It's like he senses instantly. It's not hard to tell who's coming for his throat, who's going to be fair, who's on his side, and that changes his demeanor. I've done a decent amount of research, I feel like, on Trump. Everyone, he's lying and this and that. Like, that's what the left always says. He's a liar. That's a lie. That's a lie. And I read an article just like last week. It was from Time Magazine. It's like top 10 lies he's told. And most of the lies tend to be what I would say are exaggerations. Like, he talks how he would if he was on Barstool. Like, I'm going to build like 100. He said he's going to build 1,000 feet of wall, and he built like 300 feet. Or they're all like, they're great. Like, even how he talks in the debate, like they're eating the pets. And he just talks as not presidential. And then those things get taken and they're like, he's a liar, does this. But they're not what I would say egregious lies, most of them. They're quite clear exaggerations, and he doesn't talk like a president. And whether that helps or hurts him down the road, I just think he's a not presidential president. I said during the primaries, I would have voted for Nikki Haley. I'll vote for Trump in the presidency because I want the country to get along. I don't know if they can with him because it's not his fault necessarily to me, but he's broken people's brains. They're just broken. You see people, it's like they're not making any sense. The things they jump on, like it.
There's nothing he can say that'll make him say.
What
good.
do you think happens if Kamala wins?
It's probably more of the same. I think that what the Democrats have done is far worse than really anything Trump has done. Like, in terms of not allowing a primary, to me that's crazy. Like, I'm somebody who, if I liked a candidate in the Democratic side, I could have potentially voted for that person. Like, to not give people a choice, and they really still haven't figured out, well, was he not prepared? Like, is he not mentally aware? Can he not run? Is he too old? He just thought he was going to lose. The theory of you just thought he was going to lose is not a real answer. He ran. Like, you have to then let other people run. And if he's not mentally there, which I don't think he is, Kamala has known that. Like, and she just lied about it forever. And then they kick him out. So there's so many problems I have with the way she never got a vote. Like, I don't know. You can say whatever you want about Trump. He won the Republican nomination by a landslide, fair and square. And Kamala did not. So to me, that's a major, major issue. Some of her past statements for me are just like nutty. And I don't like what's happened in a lot of Democratic states. So I would vote. I hope if she's elected, like California and New York, those don't become what happens in the United States. I don't know that it will. I don't know that much can change.
Is it hard to build a company of young, creative people in New York that abide by the culture that you want? Or do you find yourself pushing up against all kinds of things that you're just like, what are these people asking for? I don't get it.
No, because I think the hardest thing is just cost of living and taxes and things like that. For our employees to live in New York City, it's extremely expensive. We wouldn't run into the people who think and are proper employees for us. They're there. And by the way, we have across Barstool, we have super liberal, conservative, we have it all. And they clash internally like how normal humans would. But it's really the cost of living, like in taxes. And, it's just really, really hard for a young person. You could pay him $200,000 a year, and that is barely enough for someone to live in Manhattan.
Okay, well, talk about that for a second. A lot of the undercurrent of why people are angry is that there's just really exaggerated wealth inequality, right? There's folks like us that have sort of been lucky, good, whatever you want to call it, on the right side of doing well. And then there's all these other people with the potential to do well, but they're constrained somehow, and it's just getting harder and harder. Do you have sympathy for that argument? Do you have any sense of like what should be done to fix that?
I do. And it's such a hard thing to answer because I do, but I also think at times it's a crutch. Like, so where is that fine balance? And I guess the way I've thought about it as an overall philosophy is we should be looking forward, not backward. And there feels like there's a whole lot of how do we fix backwards, but that's not necessarily going to really help forward. If that makes sense. Like, I mean, California going back and they're looking at like reparations and things like it's you hear it. It's like, well, how are they going to do that? We already have like crazy inflation. And now you're saying you want to give everybody like African Americans who fit the criteria is like millions of dollars each. Is like where Like where is all this coming from? So it's moving forward. And at what point, I think a fair question is at what point is like, all right, well, this isn't working. Like if you're just consistently going back, you're not going to go forward. That's kind of how.
Like if you pay a person at Barstool $200K, I'm just picking that number. I'm not saying you do or not. And they can't really make ends meet in New York City. And they say, Dave, I got to quit. I got to move to a cheaper city or whatever. After enough people say that, do you pay that person $250 or do you think you have to move the company? Do you think you need to change the laws of the city? Like what happens when you're running this business now and that inequality issue is confronted every day in your employee base? What do you do?
Yeah, for me on a personal basis, a lot of it, we're sort of a talent company. So if I can't lose this person, I'll up the ante and pay to keep them. If we can afford to move on without them, we'll move on without them. So it's a case by case and a tough issue.
Yeah.
Dave, I just want to go back a second. You ended up buying the company back for $1. One question I had was how is it $1 and not $20 million? And then I want to talk a little bit about this idea of founder mode, which I don't know if you've heard this term, but it was kind of brought up in Silicon Valley a week or two ago. And
it's cocaine, Dave.
It's cocaine, but we kind of made a whole thing about it.
I don't know if you like founder mode or not. But,
yeah, but
no, I'm not a Coke guy. Not a Coke guy. More of a coffee guy.
Well, I guess how is it $1? How is it not $20 million?
It sounds like a great deal. How did you negotiate that?
And is it $1, or is there a back end deal or something that we're missing that kind of got worked out? Yeah.
No, I think the thought was we had a lot of headaches with state legislatures gambling. There was the Massachusetts gambling lady hated my guts. Other people did. I think for Penn to move forward, they kind of had to disassociate this with the bet they made.
And quickly.
And quickly. And let's end on very good terms with Barstool, myself. I think that's where it came from. I don't think we were like a critical part.
But did you propose the terms? Did you propose that structure?
It was mutual. It was a mutual understanding.
But $1 seems like that's a very stark number.
Was it burning money at the time?
Well, you have to put something. I think if you're going to give me the company back, like if you could do $0, I think they could do $0. Yeah, the company was losing money.
Oh, I see.
And so did you have to put money in yourself?
No. Okay.
And so you took the business over, and I want to play this clip. Nick, can you pull the clip up?
This should be interesting. I had a sales meeting today.
I think.
I let him know.
Davey's back.
I let him know I was here.
Crack some skulls?
I didn't crack skulls, but it's like their comp plan was to me. They should be making more money on their comp plan, less base salary. A lot of people may not make it. This is going to get grimy again. I will yell at you. I may forget about it 5 seconds later. If you can't handle that, don't be here. But I'm sick of the excuses. And honestly, our comp plan was ass backwards. So salespeople, I want people up there like a bunch of Gordon Gekko looking motherfuckers.
That's good, Nick. Yeah, that's good. So you step in, and this is what people in Silicon Valley might call founder mode. You're just like cracking skulls. You're seeing all this shit that's fucked up. You're like, we're going to right size the organization. We're going to get the ship headed in the right direction. We're going to restructure comp. I guess, how did things drift, during that time?
Yeah, they drifted. We're a big public company that was using us as a marketing machine, really to drive consumers to the casino. Maybe weren't as concerned about the bottom line. I wasn't involved in really a lot of the stuff, but it was growth mode, not bottom line mode, which was, I think, what they wanted from us. And that was no longer going to be the case. And it isn't the case.
Was this like Elon taking over Twitter? And he kind of goes in, he's like, what the heck is going on here? We got to
Yeah. From what I heard or saw stories of that, yes, I think very similar where, and again, this is one thing that I clash with the left. There seems to be like, oh, we shouldn't have to work hard culture. Like, I have to work like 10 hours a day or you get what you work for. So we're a great place to work. People would kill to work for Barstool. There's not, and we're always find that. Like I had a sales job. Grass is always greener on the other side. But, we do sports, entertainment. It's a great spot to work. And if you work hard, you get rewarded. But there is sort of that, I don't know, the shaming of success, earning, whatever you want to call it. I do feel like exists in our country a little bit, and I don't know where that came from, but
that's the thing that's the thing that irks me the most. I think I've said this before, but the prosperity that we enjoy as a country is because of the productivity that's arisen from entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship means everyone has a chance to build something and be successful in this country. And if you are, you deserve that success, and we should be rewarding that success with accolades, not with disdain. We shouldn't be looking down on the people.
I'm not even close. It's like it's a slur. Like I love the word billionaire. If someone could call me a billionaire, I would take that and happily be like, and I've said that, and that's one thing I won't apologize for making money, having money, spending money. None of it. Like that's what I work my ass off for, and it is wildly irritating as somebody who built Barstool. I didn't take a vacation day for 10 years. And literally, I had a hump in my neck because I was like at my computer all day. To then be told I have to coddle somebody else who works for me is infuriating. And that's good. The bigger you get, if I didn't have to have HR or any of that, I know you can't go over. I wouldn't. I want to be able to. And the bigger you get, the less you can do that because you don't know who you're talking to and what type of issue that may lead to.
Yeah.
Do you like the business building aspect? I mean, do you like building sales comp plans and looking at the finances and figuring out the right next step strategically? Or do you like being on camera and creating content and working with the creatives? Yeah. Like, how much of a business guy are you? Are you like,
I think I'm underestimated a little on the business side. There's certain aspects I like, certain aspects I hate. Like in our world, I hate negotiating the talent contracts. Like if you could have told me, Dave, what's something you're going to hate? It's the talent business where inherently we're trying to find new stars, build them up just so they can turn around, hire an agent, negotiate us, and then leave. So it's like this. I wish it was a product that I owned, and the more we do, that is I hate it. And we're using everything, and it happens at Alex, McAfee. We make millionaires out of people. But that's our business. So I hate that. But the business side of it, outside of the talent and what's the next steps, I enjoy.
How successful has it been to launch these products off of Barstool? So, you've launched a whole line of stuff. What's working and what's not working? What have you learned from that?
Yeah. What I've learned about our audience, and this probably holds true for a lot, it doesn't matter what I say or our influence, it's the product. It's like if the product's good, they do well. Like Pink Whitney is a drink that kills it for us. Dan Big Cat has a coffee. Now I did a one bite frozen pizza. It was the biggest frozen launch Walmart ever had. It's gone. It's basically disappeared because it wasn't very good. And that's a huge missed opportunity probably because I got everybody to eat it. And we had like 1 million, and not even our crowd. Our crowd's not a Walmart crowd because a lot
you're saying the product sucked. The actual pizza sucked.
The product was bad. It tasted bad.
How did that happen?
How did it taste bad?
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. We had a third party, and I just didn't understand the frozen pizza market. I thought we had made it as good as you could make it, and that just wasn't the case. So it was a bad product. I knew it was bad. So after it launched, it pretty much disappeared. I mean, it's still occasionally there. So it really is probably like High Noon, which I don't own, but I'm heavily involved in. It's an unbelievable product. It's just a spectacular drink. It's the number one vodka on the market. So we have this megaphone of people who trust us and will give anything a shot. But if the product's no good, it ain't going to work. And if the product's good, it'll work.
You know, years ago, Starbucks set up a corporate strategy. They Howard realized that every time they put a new product on the shelf, right when you check out, there at the register,
Yep.
It would sell like crazy. But then it would also go sell like crazy in Walmart and Target and Kroger's all over the country, everywhere else. And they were making brands with their platform. They realized, we've got a platform. So they started to kind of do these deals where in order to put your brand, your product on the shelf at checkout, they had to get equity in the business. Is that a model you've kind of played with where you can leverage the platform? Instead of charging people ad dollars, you basically align with brands that you love, take a piece of those brands, and then really, truly partner up with them and help them be successful and participate in that upside with them.
Yeah. So we've done that. We're starting to do that a lot more now that I've got the company back. Because when it wasn't my company, I didn't care as much because it's like, what are we getting? So I'm trying to be much more like helpful to our talent because not only are they happy, but it helps me keep them. So we're doing a lot more deals now, how you just suggested.
So what's the day in the life of Dave Portnoy? Are you like on Zooms all day talking to your teams about various things, or when do you have time to make the content? Like, how is your day structured?
It really varies. It can vary day to day. I have my set like content things that I'm doing, whether it's pizza, BFF, I may do a podcast like this, and then business stuff. But I'm not working like how I was working when I started it. We have good people at high levels who I trust and are doing like, whether it's a CFO, whether it's sales, I'm still in the loop on how everything's going, but I'm not as involved in the day. Each day, I mean,
like, would you say your style is like you observe, and then if you feel or sense it's going off track, you just jump in and just
100%.
Yeah,
that's 100% what I would do.
Yeah,
because yes, I was much more involved at the beginning. I don't want to be that involved as I want to kind of live my life a little bit. So yes, I would say that's exactly how I do it.
Let's go back to your roots for a second because I'm really curious about this. Do you think that sports gambling has been good for America so far, based on how it's been launched, how young men use it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's new. I wouldn't say it's good or bad. I mean, everyone's doing it. I'm sure there's horror stories, just like any vice of people would be like, oh, I lost money or whatever. But from my world, I was doing it my whole life, so I was doing it when it was not legal. I'm also a firm believer in let an adult be an adult. Like if they want to gamble, they do it. But I wouldn't say it's probably created a bunch of business, because the industry is spending so much and that trickles down in so many different areas. So gambling's going to happen. There's certain things that things that have happened since the dawn of man. Gambling is one of them. It is going to happen. So you might as well legalize it and make money off of it rather than have it be underground bookies and things like that.
You talk a lot about WNBA right now, but are there sports leagues that you think are just yesterday's news, a little bit boring, not really interesting?
Baseball's slow. They're also in some bizarre world, the last to embrace highlights in the internet, where the NBA was always the leader and forefront. I think it shows. Football it's the same sports basically. I think baseball's the core four that's lagging.
Do you think, do sports franchise values go up as legalization happens? And then do sports franchise values go down? And, is that a big driver, do you think, for the
NFL's talking about letting private equity, right, invest.
Yeah. They approved it last month.
They approved it, yeah.
So I can't, that to me can only make franchises skyrocket. And I don't think the bottom line always matters with sports. Like, if you're making money, you're losing money. There's not many of them. And it's the biggest toy anybody really on earth can have, right? Like what is better? And it does, for some people, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you may still not be able to get it. So I can't see any world in which that doesn't continue to increase when the demand far outweighs supply.
Do you think that there's a world where somebody figures out a way for the players to own a piece of these teams as well? Like, you talked about, you started Barstool, your 4 main guys, whether that was written down or not, you're giving them equity. In the same way, if you think about the equity that, MJ created in the league, or LeBron and Steph and KD have created in the league, they capture it in salary, but they don't capture it in equity. How do you think about that?
It's a tough question because by the time you would say like an MJ or a LeBron, maybe LeBron a little different, but by the time they've risen to the level of, this guy is worth the equity. Like if you rewound Jordan's career from day one and you had the choice, like we can have him on the Bulls or whatever, clearly the equity is probably worth it. But by the time he establishes that, you're depending on almost, which I find almost never happens in business, rare, like retroactive goodwill, good faith. Like, okay, you did so much, here's some equity. I haven't found many people do that.
No, I think for the NBA, they'll probably find a way for LeBron to get the Vegas franchise. That's kind of his reward, maybe,
Yeah.
But then there's a bunch of these other guys that are.
When you say LeBron, do you mean like the Fenway Sports Group? Because they buy teams. He's part of that.
I think it's probably Fenway, maybe, but I think that they will want him on the masthead as a direct owner.
Yeah,
I suspect, if I had to guess.
Well, I mean, Jordan had minority in the Wizards.
Do you still gamble for fun, or do you still gamble mostly for content?
Let me tell you Dave's bets this year, because I had him pulled up. He bet 2.1. I mean, tell us. So 2.1 million on the Huskies, 1.3 million on
those are winnings.
Yeah, on the Masters, on Scotty, 1.1 million on the Celtics in the NBA Finals, $1 million on Michigan over Alabama in the Rose Bowl, $500,000 on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, $500,000 on Washington over Texas in the Sugar Bowl. You're gambling.
Yeah. So to clarify, the early ones that I bet $1 million on Michigan to win the Rose Bowl. Was just $1 million to win $1 million. I went to Michigan. I went to the game. It's like this is going to be my big bet. Most of the others have been like futures. So like not nearly. The winnings have been big because they've been red hot. I've gambled my whole life. I love gambling. We have a big partnership with DraftKings. People are always like, "Oh, DraftKings gives them the money," or Penn. No, it's my own money. And yeah, it's a passion of mine. I love doing it. I bet on horse racing, sports, and I enjoy it.
The worst thing about gambling, in my opinion, is we have to pay taxes on the winnings, and then we can't carry over the losses.
The great news, which may be different, I generally don't have to worry about that because I generally lose, so I'm never like worried. This year will be year one of quite a long life that I've won, and it does look like I'm going that way. But that is crap. It's like Kamala, like unrealized gains.
Exactly.
You get taxed on something you never had.
Exactly.
Is she still doing that, by the way? Is that like a real thing?
She walked it back a little.
She walked it back, yeah. She said, "Oh no," and then she also walked back the capital gains tax from 40% down to 28%. Because the backlash she got when she said, "Hey, I support the Biden proposal for tax reform," there was so much backlash. She started to lose a lot of big donors, and they were like, "Okay, here's the compromise," and that's where they ended up. So,
got it.
What ultimately happens if she gets elected is anyone's guess. All these guys are kind of tacking to get elected, and no one knows what their actual policy will end up being when they're in office for all these folks. So, we don't know.
Do you gamble in any other way? Craps, dice?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you ever do?
Blackjack, poker?
Yeah, or stocks. Like you did stocks for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, so I love stocks. Stocks to me is better than sports gambling because you rarely, unless a company just goes poof, you're not out. If you have patience, for the most part, you can bounce back. I have money in the stock market. I'll play at a casino, but it doesn't do it for me. I'm delusional. I think I know what's going to happen in sports. I'm like, oh, I know how the Patriots are playing. Or if I'm playing blackjack, I know the rules, but I also know I have no control over what I don't count cards. I like poker, but I'm no expert at it, and I don't play that often. It
But
doesn't have the same.
you're not a
look.
quant guy. You're not an analytical guy that's doing
No.
modeling or anything like that. right?
No.
Yeah.
If I could go back and have one skill, I'd love to like be able to like have an algorithm for the stock market, like how all the people make all their money, where it just hit like. But I don't have that brain.
You did a lot of it during COVID, but then that content kind of wound down.
Yeah, well, the stock market during COVID. So we did the Penn deal like right before COVID. So we're gearing up to do all the sports gambling content, and then sports went away. And I'm like, all right, well, the stock market's still going. It's kind of the same thing. So I started doing that without much knowledge, live streaming it, and people loved it. The swings in the stock market during COVID were
bananas. Bananas.
Yeah, it
Bananas.
was, I mean,
Huge
awesome.
swings.
Like I loved it, but that's not happening. So to do the daily, I was day trading. Stocks aren't moving nearly, unless it's like in earnings. They're not moving like they were. So it's boring.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese WNBA controversy? You have some strong opinions on that.
I do have strong opinions on that. I mean, so I love Caitlin Clark.
Do you think it's Larry Magic all over again?
We'll see how Angel. She had a great rookie year.
She had a great rookie year. Yeah.
Angel was not on the same. Like, I don't think. All right, if you love college basketball, women's college basketball, sure, you knew who Angel Reese was. I did not know who Angel Reese was until she was doing this thing to Caitlin Clark in this and falling out, who is this? Whereas Magic and Bird, everybody knew those two going in. Angel, and this will sound disrespectful, but it's a fact. The majority of people would not know who she was if it wasn't for her going at Caitlin Clark and becoming her rival by really trash talking her. And anybody in the media who says it's anything other than Angel Reese thrusting herself into this conversation, which, by the way, business-wise, brilliant for her because she's got shoe deals, she was Shaq, she's got all this stuff, but people would not know who she was. Caitlin Clark is, by every metric, like a unicorn.
Transcending. She's a unicorn.
Yeah, exactly. So, and she put herself in the same conversation with it, and she's had a great rookie season. But Bird Magic, no one knew who she. I mean, I didn't know. I just saw Caitlin play in college, and she was doing things I just never seen a woman do in basketball, pulling up from the logo. I'm like, who the hell is this? And I just started watching her, and I didn't even during the game with the LSU when she did all the theatrics, I didn't notice Angel during the game. Like I bet on Iowa. I was mad, and then I don't know if I get credit or disapprove, however you want to put it. I tweeted, and this went super viral and started like a race war. I was so mad when they lost this game. I tweeted, Angel Reese is a classless piece of shit. It's the first time I talked about her, and it was right after she was taunting her. And everyone's like, you only said that because he's black. It's like, it had nothing to do with it. I bet on Caitlin. I was pissed. It didn't matter who it was. People always ignore that with me. Some of my most fiercest enemies, Roger Goodell. Like, I had to pull up like Brooks Koepka. Like all these people I'd call classless pieces of shit. It's how I talk. But the race thing from that moment really took off between these two. I won't say it's Bird Magic. I think it's disrespectful to how different, because those are two of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, two of the greatest of all time.
And Angel's a great rebounder.
And to Caitlin's credit, I think that she has completely uplifted the WNBA to a level that I don't think anybody expected.
It's insane. The number one game on NBA TV has been a WNBA game. It's beating the NBA.
I remember when, we had a moment where Steph had all these ankle injuries. This was like in that first era with Monte Ellis, and there was a lot of pressure to trade Steph. And he just came back, and all of a sudden he was lights out, right? And then what you saw was every young kid wearing his jersey, because it's much easier to look at Steph and say, I could be like Steph, right? Not nearly as tall as everybody else, not nearly as huge as everybody else. And you're starting to see the same thing with Caitlin, where all these kids are like, I can shoot like her. That's where you become transcendent, because you have this approach that seems like, well, I could do this too. It's that thing that just makes you a huge star.
I said when Nike did the deal with her, I thought it was the biggest steal like in the history of sports marketing. Like it was 10 million. And then you look at like Devin Booker is like 30 million a year. There's no person on the planet who can tell me Devin Booker is more marketable than Caitlin Clark. It's like Caitlin Clark is up there with anybody. She's She's hit something that you rarely, whether it's a Tiger, a Serena, somebody who is just redefining the sport. And it's not the color of her skin. That was what drove me nuts with this, because the WNBA is filled with white superstars. People are at Diana Taurasi, the Sabrina Ioka. There's a ton of
Ionescu,
Ionescu, and the woman from UConn who's at the top, and Sue Bird. There's a ton. She plays different. If you watch the game, she does not play how anybody's seen a woman play. That's it. And everyone made it into all these other issues. She plays different. You haven't seen it before.
Dave, let me ask you a question. You've remained steadfast in speaking your mind, speaking your truth, telling your opinions. It's gotten you a lot of heat over the years. You got a lot of people writing articles negatively about you, chasing down personal stories about you, all this sort of stuff. You're still here. And there was a period of time for a couple of years where everyone talked about cancel culture, and someone does something that is inappropriate or is a microaggression using a big platform and they should be canceled, and everyone rallies behind and puts this person out. They're done. But you haven't been canceled. Why is that? And do you think that we're kind of post-cancel culture in America? Was that a moment that's come and gone? Or do you think we're still kind of fighting the fight for free speech in America and the ability to speak one's mind and speak one's voice without being deplatformed and shut down?
Yeah, I don't think it's totally gone. I think I'm here just Barstool's been around for a long time, so people really do know me. Like the fans or people have read Barstool for 20 years have stuck by me, and that's been important. Like if you're on someone else's platform, it's a lot easier to deplatform them because you have advertisers and somebody above who don't want to deal with the headache or anything like that. So I've been even when Penn was here, and there are people above me theoretically. What choice do they have to have my back? Because it's well, if you don't have my back, I still have this megaphone. I'm just going to be like, guess what? These guys don't have my back. And then poof, everything they've done. So I've had that luxury of being able to speak directly and not having to worry, where if you're just on a different network, they can pull the plug a lot easier. And I'm kind of an open book. So I think what has worked in my favor, I've never been worried, well, if I speak out or defend myself, what's going to come out next? Or is there someone lurking in the closets? I've never cared. Everything is out there. I've told the truth, and that's allowed me to be pretty comfortable. Like the heavy accusations, like Business Insider, when like sexual misconduct type stuff, like all garbage. And when I say there wasn't 0.001, there was no truth to any of the stuff that happened. And I had all the facts. And so when this thing hit, like it made me look kind of stupid or embarrassed because nobody wants like personal text. But I had that stuff out there. Like it was out there hours after. It's like, here it is. Here's everything that disproves it. Not everyone does that.
You think people are just sick and tired of being told what to think and who to follow and who's right and who's wrong, and they want to kind of make up their own minds and not kind of get behind this whole cancel culture organizational system anymore? You think
100%. I find though that? My biggest issue is I don't know what to believe. Like I don't believe anything. Like and that's kind of unfortunate. Like you just hear so many things, and it's a lot of times even hard to figure out where the truth is. Like you try to dig into it, especially in politics. Like, but that's probably a good example. I hear so many things on both sides, and then when you really try to dig down and be like, is this real? Is this fake? It's hard to find the root of the truth. And that is actually kind of scary.
I think that's why freedom of speech matters now more than ever, because we got to have more voices, not fewer, so that people can ultimately find the truth themselves.
Have you been able to convince your dad that maybe the New York Times isn't always telling the truth?
No, I haven't, which is scary.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have an answer for it. With me, he does. But like he still truly believes. He's one of those guys where there's nothing Trump could do. Nothing. Like he's bad. And if he gives the greatest answer, greatest thing, whatever, it doesn't matter. Trump's bad. I mean, you can give, well, what about the other side? He doesn't care. So, no, he's skewed. He's somebody who's going to watch mainstream media and pretty much believe everything they say. Maybe a little bit he's changed, and I think there's a lot of people like him.
Well, before we wrap, what's the future for Barstool, Dave? What are you going to do with the business over time? It's just a business you now own forever. You're going to run it, make a profit, live off of it. I mean, what's your long term?
Yeah, I mean that
goal?
that kind of nailed it. And this may sound not like a true founder. I sometimes get this, but I want Barstool to be a place where we break even or make money, so I'm not overly stressed and pulling my hair out, and people enjoy coming to work and they have a good job. That, like I've said, and I said to our employees when I took it, it's like I've made my money. I'm never going to become like a billionaire off Barstool unless someone pays it. So I'm happy, I'm comfortable, and I want our employees to have a place there that they know a job is there, and you know, they don't hate going to work. That's kind of, and we'll look for opportunities and try to continue to grow. But I'm not maniacal. How do we get to the next step?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That's great. Dave, thanks for being with us. This has been an awesome chat.
Happy
Really
to do
enjoyed
it.
it.
Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
Take care.
It's great.
See you guys.
Okay.